Joining us now is State Senator Willie Simmons. He's a Democrat from District 13. Welcome to that issue.
I'm glad to be here.
Let's jump right in. In your opinion, how big is the texting and driving problem?
Texting and driving problem, based upon all the statistics that we heard when we was looking at doing the piece of legislation a couple of sessions ago, it is huge. We have a serious problem. We looked at it, and as statesmen concerned about the safety of our citizens, and especially the young, we decided that it was a public safety matter that needed to be addressed.
Now, the ban itself was passed in 2015. Why don't you take us back through that process? Who were the players in that? And, how was it passed?
Prior to the legislation that we passed, Senator Doughty was very, very involved. As a matter of fact, the year before we passed some legislation and it didn't get through the House of Representatives, we decided to come back and modify it somewhat, and we took a piece of legislation that we were able to get passed. It was unanimous, joint kind of support from both Republicans and Democrats across the board, both on the Senate and the House side, because we had individuals coming in, parents who had seen their children lose their lives, parents who had injured children, as well as the public safety community, law enforcement individuals joined us to come in and say, you need to pass some legislation. And we had the surgical medical community to get involved in it, because it is a public safety and a health crisis when you look at what happens to individuals when they are detracted.
In that bill itself, it had passed pretty quickly through the 2014 session, but died in the final days. The 2015 session, it was one of the first bills that was passed pretty quickly, correct?
Correct, because we realized the importance of it and wanted to come back and take care of better informing the House on what the matter was going to do and get more folks involved, and we were successful in doing that.
Now, the bill that became law, did you have any concerns about it at the time?
Initially, we wanted a piece of legislation that was a little bit more strict, had more demands and more control, but we was having problems in getting that passed, so we pulled back. There were many individuals who felt like we already had laws on the books that would address the issue that just needed to be enforced. We felt that we needed to bring attention to this distractor because it was so harmful and such a public safety, involving individuals who was doing the right thing, but other individuals who were detracted and getting into their lane and creating problems as far as accidents and, in many cases, fatalities.
Now, the Mississippi Highway Patrol has issued just over 130 tickets statewide for texting and driving over the past year. Some police departments we've talked to, as well as the Mississippi Association of Chiefs of Police, are saying that they're not writing the citations under the texting and driving law. So what's your reaction to that?
Well, as you well know, this is a civil law, and there are many law enforcement individuals who just don't feel that this is one issue that they should go after for some reason. It's something that's getting our attention. As you well know, we put in legislation that the Highway Patrol would monitor it and give us some feedback. So I think it's time now for us to have a hearing and bring law enforcement personnel in and others to take a look at what kinds of problems they are facing, what things they're looking at. Because this bill also got tied up and caught up in, at one point, profiling. There was individuals who were concerned about whether it would be profiling or not. We always looked at it as public safety as opposed to public profiling. So we need to go back and revisit it and see what we can do to strengthen it to make it a better piece of legislation.
Here's some of the feedback that the police have been telling us. They said the law itself was poorly written. A city officer must go through a county court to enforce the law, something that you mentioned. The burden of proof on the officer is too high, and that it doesn't have enough teeth. You mentioned that it's a civil penalty and not necessarily a criminal offense. What are your thoughts? Are those things that need to be strengthened?
Those are things we want to hear from law enforcement on. We want to get law enforcement more involved, especially since they have opportunity to take a look at it. We've had 133 citation issued. We want to know what was the outcome of that, what were the challenges that law enforcement faced as a result of taking those cases, and whether there were citizens who actually received a citation, and what their concerns were, what kind of problems did it create, and then why. Why from our local law enforcement individuals? Why is it that they are not writing any citations. Do we need to do something to make the law a better piece of legislation that can be interpreted by all in the same manner and enforced in the same manner at all levels? So there's a lot of things we need to look at. So that's why I'm saying we should have a hearing and get those individuals to come in and hear from Mississippi Highway Patrol to see what they have found and look at those 133 citations that they have actually written.
Does that frustrate you that the officers are not necessarily enforcing this particular law?
It concerns me. It concerns me because we, the legislative body, when we passed the law and put it in place, we was doing it because of public safety. If we are still having an issue and no one is giving me any data to suggest that simply because we wrote the piece of legislation that we have seen a decrease in fatalities in an accident. But we want to hear from the Highway Patrol. We want to hear from other law enforcement individuals and find out why is it that if we felt so strong from a legislative point of view that we wanted to pass a law like many other states have done and put in place something that would give us more safety for our drivers on the highway and passengers who are in vehicles, then why is it not being enforced?
Is this something that you're looking to revisit during this next legislative session in January?
Yes, because again, I think with the 133, although it's not a lot, on one hand we can say that it's good that we're not having a lot of citations written because we don't want individuals to be profiled, so we're not advocating that. But if there is a need for individuals to be given a citation, but law enforcement is not doing that simply because they have some concerns about how it's going to be enforced and how they're going to prove it, then we need to look at all that and revisit it.
What about alternatives to revisiting the law? Is there something that the lawmakers can do or police officers can do to strengthen this law?
As opposed to being an expert in that area, I would much rather wait and hear from the experts who are on the highways and streets who are looking at these vehicles moving and looking at the individuals who may or may not be utilizing cell phones that's detracting, texting. So what kind of things are we seeing? We've had the law in the books now for almost 2 years. So let's take a year and a half. So let's take a look at that and see what we can get from our law enforcement.
What some states have done is they have fully banned using cell phones in cars, period. Is that something that you would support?
I'm not sure I want to do that. I want to bring about public safety, but I also want drivers and individuals who utilize the vehicles and in vehicles to be able to have access when needed. So I'm not going to say that I want it banned, but we want to make sure that we have a good public safety law that can be enforced by law enforcement without profiling individuals.
So at the end of the day, is the state doing enough to make sure people are driving safely when they're going down the roads and highways?
I think our law enforcement personnel do a good job in enforcing and trying to keep our highways safe. So often we don't have enough of them on the highways, especially when it comes to the Highway Patrol. We run into a problem with that from time to time. But overall, I think our law enforcement, with what they have to work with, is doing a good job of doing that. But we can do more with detractors, such as texting and other kind of things that we want to get at, that will give them an arms up, heads up on doing some things that will make our highways even safer.
In your opinion, what are some of those things? What do you think needs to be done right now?
Well, number one is to improve on this texting while driving piece of legislation that we have, a bill that we have, a piece of legislation that we have on the books to do that. And then there's some other detractors that we may want to look at as we go forward. Again, we're not trying to invade the privacy or invade the rights of our drivers. We want them to have the rights to have access and do things. But again, the most important thing that all of us want to do, I think, is to have safe highways, because when we're traveling those highways or when our family and friends and others are traveling those highways, we want you to be as safe as possible. And one simple mistake with a detractor, when the person takes their eyes off the highway for a split second, can create a nightmare that we will never be able to forget, because one of our loved ones' life has been taken. And that's what we want to do at the end, is to work toward making sure that we can avoid that as much as possible.
Do you think Mississippi's highways and roads are safe now?
I think they, again, law enforcement is doing a good job. I think we can be safer when you have the number of fatalities that we have in the state, and we have seen a decrease in that over the years with some of the things that's been put in place. It can be safer. So, but to answer the question, are they safe as we would like for them to be? No, because we read and hear too many incidents and situations where lives have been lost for whatever reason. Whether it was just a bad highway, a bad situation for a railroad crossing, or a bad situation for any given reason. When we read about fatalities, that means that a life has been lost. And when a life is lost, it means that safety is not adequate enough to protect every person that's getting on our highways. And we may never reach that point, Paul, but we as legislators want to make sure that we do everything possible to keep our highways safe.
Senator Willie Simmons, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.